They shoved the pregnant waitress down the stairs because they thought she was too slow. The secret billionaire CEO's reaction shocked everyone. What if one single act of heartlessness could alter the trajectories of 3 lives forever? In a cozy little diner right on Maple Street, the coffee was always piping hot and the apple pie tasted just like your grandma used to make it. 34-year-old Linda was wiping down tables with one hand, while the other gently cradled her 7-month baby bump. The morning had been especially hectic, and her swollen feet were killing her with every step she took on that worn linoleum floor. She'd been pulling double shifts for weeks, saving every single cent for the baby that was due in just 2 short months. Her husband had lost his construction job 3 weeks prior, and Linda's tips were all that stood between them and losing their small apartment. She moved a little slower these days, her body feeling heavy with the new life she was carrying. But her smile never wavered when she served customers their morning joe. Little did she realize that this particular Tuesday morning would put everything she believed about the goodness of people to the ultimate test. Where are you tuning in from? Linda had been working at Rosie's Diner for a solid 6 years, and in all that time, she'd never come across customers quite like the 3 women who breezed in that morning. They were decked out in expensive clothes and carrying designer handbags, their manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table as they demanded to be served right away. Linda approached their booth with her usual warm smile, notepad in hand, ready to take their orders. But before she could even say hello, the blonde woman with the sharp bob haircut snapped her fingers. "We're in a hurry," she announced icily. "We have a board meeting in 20 minutes, and we need you to take our orders now." Linda nodded politely and started taking their elaborate coffee orders. Extra hot, no foam, oat milk on the side, and all with specific temperature requirements that would take the kitchen extra time and care to get just right. As Linda headed toward the coffee station, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her lower back. She paused for a moment, steadying herself against the counter, her hand instinctively reaching to support her growing belly. The baby had been especially active that morning, and Dr. Patterson had cautioned her about overdoing it. But they desperately needed the money, especially with David still pounding the pavement looking for work and the medical bills piling up higher and higher. When she returned to their table 5 minutes later with their complicated drinks, the 3 women were deep in conversation about stock prices and quarterly reports. Linda carefully placed the first cup down, but the dark-haired woman immediately took a sip and frowned. "This isn't hot enough," she complained loudly. "I specifically said extra hot." "I'm so sorry," Linda replied gently. "Let me get you a fresh cup right away." She reached for the lukewarm coffee, but the woman snatched it away sharply, causing Linda to lose her balance slightly. The sudden movement sent another jolt of pain through her back, and she had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. "Are you even listening?" the third woman demanded. "We told you we're in a rush. This is exactly the kind of slow, incompetent service that's ruining this country." Linda felt her face flush with embarrassment as other customers started to stare. She'd served countless people over the years, and she'd always taken pride in her careful attention to detail with every single order. But today, carrying this precious new life inside her, everything just seemed to take a little bit longer. Linda hurried back to the kitchen as quickly as her swollen feet would allow, asking Joe, the cook, to remake the coffee order, paying extra attention to the temperature this time. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited, and she couldn't help but think about her own mother, who had worked as a waitress while pregnant with Linda 40 years earlier. "Kindness costs nothing," her mother always used to say, "but its value is immeasurable." When Linda returned with the fresh, steaming coffee, she moved extra carefully, taking slow, deliberate steps to ensure everything was perfect this time. But as she approached their table, she overheard their conversation and froze in her tracks. "My husband's company is looking to buy up properties in this neighborhood," the blonde woman was saying. "Once we tear down these little dumps and put in some high-end developments, we'll triple our investment." "Rosie's Diner has been here for 30 years, Linda thought to herself, remembering how the kind elderly owner, Mrs. Chun, had given her this job when she was struggling to make ends meet after graduating high school. This place wasn't just a restaurant. It was a community hub. It was where neighbors gathered, where lonely seniors came for a bit of company, and where young families could afford a decent meal without breaking the bank. As Linda carefully set down the fresh coffee, the dark-haired woman tasted it again and nodded approvingly. But just as Linda started to relax, thinking that the worst was finally over, the woman spotted a small water spot on her silverware. "This is disgusting," she announced loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "How can you expect us to eat with dirty utensils?" Linda felt tears well up in her eyes, but she managed to keep her composure. "I'll get you clean silverware right away," she said softly. But as she reached across the table to gather the supposedly dirty utensils, her belly brushed against the edge, and she had to adjust her position to reach everything safely. "Oh my God," the blonde woman said with exaggerated disgust. "This is ridiculous. You're way too pregnant to do your job properly. Someone as slow and clumsy as you shouldn't be serving food to people." Her words hit Linda like a physical blow, and she felt the baby give a strong kick, as if responding to her distress. Other customers in the diner had stopped eating to watch the drama unfold. Mr. Peterson, who came in every single morning for coffee and eggs, looked like he was about to say something. "If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up." Linda was oblivious to the fact that, sitting quietly in a corner booth, a man in a simple flannel shirt and work boots was watching everything unfold with growing anger. The humiliation was almost unbearable, but Linda forced herself to focus on the baby growing inside her. Every tip, every smile, every difficult customer was bringing her one step closer to holding her child in her arms. She gathered the silverware with trembling hands, but as she turned to walk away, the blonde woman stuck out her perfectly manicured foot. Linda didn't see it coming. Her toe caught on the woman's shoe, and suddenly she was falling forward, her pregnant belly leading the way toward the unforgiving tile floor. Time seemed to slow down as she twisted desperately, trying to protect her unborn child, but gravity and momentum were far stronger than her frantic attempts to right herself. She hit the ground hard, landing on her side with a cry that echoed through the suddenly silent diner. Pain shot through her hip and shoulder, but even worse was the terrifying stillness in her belly. The baby had stopped moving. "My baby," she whispered, her hands frantically pressing against her stomach. "Please, please be okay." The three women looked down at her with cold indifference. "Maybe now you'll be more careful," the blonde one said, grabbing her purse. "We're leaving. The service here is absolutely unacceptable." They stepped around Linda's prone body as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience, but they didn't get very far. The man in the flannel shirt had risen from his corner booth, and something in his movements made the entire diner hold its breath. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but there was an unmistakable quiet authority in the way he carried himself as he approached the fallen waitress. "Ma'am, don't move," he said gently to Linda, his voice carrying the kind of calm assurance that comes from someone who is used to being listened to. He knelt beside her, his calloused hands carefully supporting her shoulders. "I'm calling an ambulance right now. Just breathe and try to stay still." The three women had stopped at the door, sensing that the atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. The man looked up at them with eyes that seemed to see right through their expensive clothes and superficial facades. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly, but there was steel beneath the soft words. "You just assaulted a pregnant woman." "Assaulted?" the dark-haired woman scoffed. "She tripped over her own feet. We're not responsible for her clumsiness." But her voice wavered slightly, and Linda noticed that the man was already on his phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. "Have you ever dealt with something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments section below." As the ambulance sirens grew closer, Linda felt the baby give a small, reassuring kick, and she closed her eyes in relief, completely unaware that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The emergency room doctor's gentle smile was the first indication that everything was going to be all right. "Your baby is perfectly fine," Dr. Williams assured Linda as she lay on the examination table, David clutching her hand tightly. "But you need to take it easy for the next few days. No more double shifts." The wave of relief that washed over Linda was so intense that she finally allowed herself to cry. Tears of gratitude, exhaustion, An overwhelming emotion streamed down her face. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the three women were quickly realizing that they weren't dealing with just any ordinary Good Samaritan. Detective Morrison arrived within minutes of the 911 call, followed by two patrol officers who had been fully briefed on the situation. The man in the flannel shirt introduced himself simply as James. But when he handed Detective Morrison his business card, the officer's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Ladies," Detective Morrison said, approaching the three women, who were now looking significantly less confident. "You're being charged with assault. The entire incident had been captured by the diner's security cameras, and we have multiple witnesses who saw you deliberately trip a pregnant woman." "This is absurd," the blonde woman protested. "Do you even know who we are? I'm calling my lawyer." But her bravado quickly crumbled when James stepped forward and she got her first clear look at the quiet man who had come to Linda's defense. James Hammond, CEO of Hammond Industries, was worth more than the GDP of most small countries. But he'd built his empire from the ground up, starting with a single construction company that his grandfather had founded. He still visited job sites, still wore work boots, and still remembered what it felt like to worry about making rent. He'd been having breakfast at Rosie's Diner every Tuesday morning for the past 3 years, ever since his wife had passed away and the big house had started to feel too empty. The simple kindness of the staff and the honest, comforting food reminded him of his humble beginnings. "I don't make a habit of getting involved in situations like this," James said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of high-stakes business negotiations. "But I also can't stand by and watch people mistreat others." He turned to Detective Morrison. "I want to press charges as a witness, and I'm prepared to testify in court if necessary." The three women exchanged panicked glances. They recognized him now. His picture had been splashed across the business sections of newspapers more times than they could even count. If you've been enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. But James wasn't finished yet. He pulled out his phone and made a call that would change Linda's life forever, although she wouldn't find out about it until the next morning. 3 weeks later, Linda stood in the doorway of her brand new apartment, barely able to believe what had happened. The spacious 2-bedroom unit was located in a safe, family-friendly neighborhood with excellent schools, and the rent was being completely covered by what James had discreetly called a victim's compensation fund. David had been offered a foreman position with Hammond Construction, a job that came with comprehensive health benefits and a salary that would allow Linda to stay home with the baby once she arrived. The three women from that terrible morning had faced consequences that extended far beyond the initial assault charges. The blonde woman's husband's real estate company had lost several major contracts when word got around about his wife's appalling behavior toward a pregnant waitress. The dark-haired woman had been asked to resign from her high-powered position at an investment firm after the security footage went viral on social media. The third woman had quietly paid a substantial settlement to Linda and had also taken anger management classes, eventually writing a heartfelt letter of apology that brought tears to Linda's eyes. But the most beautiful transformation of all had absolutely nothing to do with money or justice. Rosie's Diner had become a powerful symbol of community kindness. Customers started leaving extra-large tips, not just for Linda, but for the entire staff. Local businesses began displaying signs that proudly proclaimed, "Kindness served here," and the diner's bustling morning rush had transformed into a gathering place where neighbors genuinely looked out for one another. James still came in every Tuesday morning, but now he often found himself sharing his usual corner booth with other regular customers. Mrs. Chen, the diner's owner, had framed a heartwarming photo of Linda holding her healthy baby girl, who had been born exactly 2 months after that frightening day. The picture hung right next to the cash register, where Linda's bright, radiant smile served as a constant reminder to everyone who walked through the door that both kindness and cruelty have far-reaching consequences that ripple outward in ways that we can't always predict. On the special day that Linda brought baby Grace to visit the diner for the very first time, James was there waiting with a small, beautifully wrapped gift. It was a silver locket that had once belonged to his late wife. "Every little girl should have something beautiful to remind her of how loved she is," he said softly, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Linda often reflected on her mother's wise words. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. That awful Tuesday morning had taught her that the opposite was also undeniably true. Cruelty always comes with a price, and sometimes the universe has a remarkable way of ensuring that that price is paid in full. Grace would grow up in a world where she learned that standing up for others wasn't just the right thing to do, but that it was absolutely necessary, and that sometimes the most ordinary-looking people possess the most extraordinary hearts. As Linda rocked her daughter to sleep that evening, she whispered the very same words that her mother had once whispered to her, knowing that kindness, like love, was a precious gift meant to be passed down from one generation to the next. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, please remember to leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more inspiring tales that remind us all of the incredible power of human compassion.